What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the second installment of What If Naruto Had the Golden Touch. Now, before I do get started with the video, I just quickly want to say thank you guys so much for the support on last video. It ended up getting like 8,000 views and almost like 700 likes. So if you didn't like the video in this last part, then it would be really appreciated if you guys were to go back, click that button. I know it's hard because I also only like videos that I like rewatching every now and then, but it helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm. So if you guys could do me that favor, I would truly appreciate it. But without any further ado, since I don't want to waste your guys' time, I'm just going to go ahead and get started with the story, seeing as, you know, that's what you guys are here for, right? That said, enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Everybody does so, and immediately a man would stand atop the same blade that was just thrown at their direction. Kakashi looks at the direction of said man before then saying his name, Zabuza Momoishi. And from here, this strange man would look towards the direction of the team before then stating Kakashi's name and calling him the copycat ninja. Suddenly the team would be surprised as to what he means by that, and out of nowhere we would have the same battle as in the original events of Naruto go down. Kakashi and Zabuza would begin engaging in battle, and eventually Zabuza would get the upper hand via placing Kakashi in a water prison jutsu. It's at this moment that Naruto and Sasuke would both realize that something's definitely going on, as Naruto looks towards the direction of Sasuke and tells him that they need to make a plan now. And it's at this point that Sasuke realizes, you know, that that's exactly what they need to do. So Sasuke just nods to Naruto as they both literally make a plan in the span of like a second and a blink, which is so crazy to me. Like, Naruto and Sasuke both made an insane elaborate plan in the span of like a second. They didn't even exchange words. They just looked at each other and nodded. And from here, Sasuke went on to grab a Demon Wind Shuriken and then throw it at the direction of Zabuza. Now, obviously he dodges it, but there was actually a second one underneath it that, you know, actually caused Zabuza to actually be caught off guard. Now, when the second, Shuriken gets dodged by Zabuza, Naruto dispels the transformation jutsu and then grabs Zabuza with one hand as Zabuza is just stuck. Now, how do I put this? Zabuza, right, was sitting there, you know, like holding his arm out to hold Kakashi into the water prison jutsu, right? But what ends up happening is basically Naruto pretty much ends up touching Zabuza, and the second he makes contact with Zabuza, Zabuza begins to turn or feel his arm turn into gold. It's at this moment that Zabuza realizes that he's done for if he doesn't literally cut it off now. So Zabuza is forced to pretty much cut his own arm off or else die here. And what do you know? Zabuza literally is forced to cut his arm off and let that thing sink to the bottom of the lake that they were standing on. It's at this moment that Haku from the shadows would bust in and throw a Senbon needle at the direction of Zabuza, leading Zabuza to pretty much be taken out earlier than he would have been in canon without Kakashi having to extend more chakra. He was able to deactivate his Sharingan, and from here the team went on to question Haku, but Haku didn't really mind this and just pretty much ended up making some BS story about how he's a ninja tracking mist from the, you know, the hidden village in the mist or something like that, right? That ends up happening, and Kakashi simply nods, knowing that his chakra reserves are extremely low right now. If he was to try to fight this person one-on-one, he's really not too sure who would come out on top. So Kakashi decides it's a safer option to simply allow them to get away, recuperate, and try this again another day. And that's exactly what ends up happening. The team ends up letting Haku get away, and following this small altercation, they all make their way towards the house of Tazuna, where they end up meeting his daughter, Tsunami, and Inari. Now, once this all happens and they're all pretty much eating dinner in the kitchen, Tsunami whips something up and they all enjoy it a ton. But it's at this moment that Inari would bust into the kitchen and essentially begin berating them all, telling them that there's no point of them being here. They're just gonna die just like everybody else. Naruto, upon hearing this, would keep listening to Inari as he tells them that they have no idea how hard life is around here, that they have to survive off scraps, that everything just gets taken from them, and Naruto would sit there in silence, not even uttering a word, not even banging the table or even screaming at Inari like in the original. Naruto quite literally could not care any less what Inari thinks about him, because Naruto knows what it's like to actually live in a horrible environment where nobody cares about you. He didn't even have a mother to cook meals for him. Naruto, quite frankly, had nothing. And he's not going to argue with some pipsqueak about that. So instead, Naruto finishes his meal and makes his way outside, as Inari yells at him one more thing, calling him a loser, and Naruto simply walks out and begins training. He would go on to ask Kakashi if he could help him get his chakra control to subpar levels. And Kakashi would actually assist Naruto in this, telling him that he could definitely be of some assistance with that. And he goes on to essentially begin explaining the tree walking jutsu to Naruto before he explains it to everyone else, just so Naruto can get a bit of a handle of it. So by the time he teaches it to them, they all have equal understanding of chakra control and how to essentially muster up the chakra to their feet and help Naruto with his horrible chakra control due to the influence of the Nine Tails. About 4 days later, Kakashi goes on to finally start teaching the team some things, and the first thing that he goes on to teach them is essentially tree walking, something that Naruto turns out to be the last one to learn, and Sasuke is the second, with Sakura obviously being the first one, since she does have pretty great chakra control. I mean, it's probably super easy to control something when you basically have almost none of it, right? I mean, if I had no water, I'd probably be really good at, keeping it. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is that essentially after this happens, Kakashi actually has a lot more time to train Team 7 in taijutsu, teach them a couple of extra jutsu, help them out with chakra control, and even actually go on to teach them water walking way earlier than they would have learned these things in canon. All three of them end up getting significantly stronger than they would have been in the original, and Naruto would also be working on his golden touch abilities, or his golden Kekkei Genkai, as he knows it, as they all begin working day by day by day by day, and eventually the day comes when Naruto pretty much ends up oversleeping. Now, why does he oversleep? Simply because he had worked himself to the bone the very previous day, and it's a good thing he did, because he was actually there to defend Inari and Tsunami from these intruders that would have made it their way to their house if Naruto wasn't there. They probably would be dead, but Naruto made sure to turn them both to gold and then rushed towards the direction of his team towards the bridge. Once he arrived, he pretty much ends up seeing a horrible sight. He sees Kakashi fighting against Zabuza, a thick fog, and then he also sees Haku, who is essentially sitting there inside a crystal ice mirror jutsu, with Sasuke getting hit with countless needles of Senbon. Naruto, upon seeing this, would immediately rush in towards that direction, and seeing as he's outside of the ice crystal dome, he begins to essentially touch each and every single one of the mirrors, slowly turning them to gold, or actually instantaneously, as Haku jumps from one mirror to another and ends up pretty much hitting a golden wall as hard as possible. Haku, upon seeing this, would question what? As he pretty much was running full speed and then just crashed into a wall. That's pretty much what happened, right? Except Haku was moving like at lightning levels of speed, so it definitely rattled Haku up. So when Haku ended up pretty much hitting and ricocheting off of said mirror, he looks up towards the direction of Naruto only to wonder what happened, but Naruto looks to Sasuke and tells him to get up and stop acting weak. Sasuke gets up slowly with the Sharingan active and then says, "Who you calling weak, fool?" And suddenly, Naruto has a chuckle on his face as he then rushes towards the direction of Haku, and Haku, not knowing of Naruto's abilities, would actually begin getting close with hand-to-hand combat. Zabuza would say, "Haku, you idiot! Didn't I tell you?" And Haku was barely able to dodge out of the way of the attack, leading to Naruto not being able to actually turn him to gold. Naruto and Sasuke both rush in with taijutsu flurries, and it's at this point that Haku begins to have to get serious, because he knows that if he doesn't, essentially Zabuza will die. Also, guys, I'm really not sure if you guys can hear it, but the neighbors are like blow drying their yard or something like that, like leaf blowing their yard right now. So if you guys can hear it, million apologies, but I'm pretty sure you can't. Hold on, let me just stay silent. Yeah, I don't think you guys can hear it. Okay, but no. Basically, what ends up happening is essentially, what was I saying again? Oh yeah, Naruto and Sasuke were fighting against Haku. And eventually, Naruto was able to land one concisive blow, which would actually cause Haku to get caught off guard and immediately begin transforming to gold. Haku didn't have enough time to react because he was fending off the attacks of Sasuke, so inevitably, Haku began turning into gold fully, and Zabuza simply had to watch as he was being restrained by all of Kakashi's summonings, aka his dogs, and then got pierced right through the heart with a Chidori. And as this happened, the team looked towards Kakashi as he then, covered up his Sharingan once more and then dispelled the Chidori Jutsu, looking towards the team, asking them, "You guys are right?" Naruto immediately looks at Kakashi, nods his head, and Sasuke is actually a bit surprised by what Kakashi just did, asking Kakashi how it feels to kill. Kakashi simply looks towards the direction of Sasuke and says, the first time, it hits like a train, Sasuke, but after you've done it hundreds of times, it's almost bland. You almost don't feel anything. It's just like taking a sip of water. It becomes second nature. Don't think about it too hard, Sasuke. As suddenly, a gigantic ship begins coming towards the direction of the bridge, and once it ends up pretty much landing, all of the men, aka Gato's men, end up getting off and pretty much beginning to take out their weapons and get creepy smiles on their faces, right? They all get these creepy smiles, and immediately all of them ask Gato what they should do with them. Suddenly Gato gets out and he immediately reveals that, he was never going to pay Haku or Zabuza in the first place. Naruto goes on to undo the effects of the gold to Haku, and Haku, upon hearing the words from Gato saying he was never going to pay them, that Zabuza was just a tool, Haku immediately gets into a bloodthirsty state, right? Where he essentially ends up rushing towards the direction of Gato's men and throwing Senbon so fast that it's just in the blink of an eye, you would have missed it. Countless of them would just drop in an instant, and Haku would immediately get in front of Gato as, he looks at him with a death stare and then pierces him right through the throat as Gato falls into the water, and Haku would then turn his attention back towards Team 7, looking at Kakashi with anger in his eyes before then realizing that it was a fight to the death. It was either them or him. But thinking about, how Zabuza had died, Haku couldn't help but feel as if the real villain here was already taken care of. Haku lifted up his Senbon and then stopped, thinking that, it's not their fault Zabuza died. It was his, and he's already taken care of. Haku would tell them that they're no longer enemies anymore and would then begin to try to pretty much go away. But it's at this moment that Naruto would pretty much stop Haku and ask him if he has anywhere to go. Haku nods his head, and suddenly Naruto asks him if he's willing to join the Leaf Village, saying that Konoha would actually take care of him, and saying that they could give him a proper burial. And Haku, after hearing this, would actually kind of shed a tear and actually accept the proposal from Naruto, as they bury Zabuza, and Haku then instantly ends up becoming a Hidden Leaf Shinobi. That's a pretty good conclusion to the Land of the Waves arc, I would say, and a couple of events did actually end up changing just enough for this event to actually have been pretty interesting, all in all. They all eventually end up pretty much getting their thanks by all of the villagers and make their way back to Konoha for Haku to get tests done to see if he's worthy of becoming a Leaf Shinobi and to see if he is a traitor, and also asked to hand over some precious information that he may know about other countries. Haku would do so, and they would actually end up accepting Haku into the Leaf Village, with Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi being all informed of the Chunin exams. Now, with the Chunin exams being something that's definitely present on their minds, all of them go home, and there is actually no Konohamaru Naruto interaction this time to lead to the Sand siblings to actually meet Team 7, just due to the fact that Naruto was never exactly close with Hiruzen, so he never even got to meet Konohamaru, and instead Konohamaru doesn't learn the Rasengan, he doesn't learn the sexy transformation, and everything that Konohamaru all in all would have been taught by Naruto never ends up happening. Instead, Naruto simply goes off and trains somewhere, and ends up making his way towards the Chunin Tower, tower the day that they all have, well, the Chunin exams. Once they're there, a couple of moments don't really end up changing, so this is the point where I'm kind of going to just speed blitz the entire story, right? Sasuke ends up kind of getting into his battle with Lee. That doesn't change whatsoever. Lee goes on to ask Naruto if he wants to fight, and it's at this moment that Naruto would actually decline. And suddenly, Lee's just shocked, like, what? He doesn't want to fight me? Like, I didn't expect that. And Naruto says that he's going to save his strength for the real battles. Lee agrees, and suddenly Guy Sensei comes in and punches Lee right across the face, telling him that, he's not allowed to use those abilities or even fight before the Chunin exams. And suddenly, all of them make their way towards the tower, only to be greeted by Kabuto and the rest of the other people who are just getting trying to make their way to Chunin. Eventually, they all end up passing the test, and Naruto doesn't have to give his incredible speech, so more and more people are actually eliminated because Naruto didn't give his words of encouragement to the rest of the people that would have stayed. That said, there's less people in the Chunin exams, and when all of them end up finally going in there, the event with Orochimaru, Anko would still end up happening, with Anko being like, weird person. But he doesn't exactly question it, and eventually Team 7 finds their way into the Forest of Death. And it's at this moment that Naruto goes on to essentially go off to take a leak, right? He goes off some sort of distance and Sasuke goes on to tell him the code. Now, Naruto this time around isn't dumb, so he's going to actually remember the code, but when Orochimaru has the weapon holster on the wrong leg, Sasuke's immediately able to tell that that's not the real Naruto, going on to call him out and essentially telling him that he needs to get lost. Or actually not Orochimaru, but it's another ninja, right? They end up pretty much chasing him off, and suddenly the real Orochimaru appears in front of them. Sasuke has to stab himself in the leg to get over his fear, and then he ends up basically running away with Sakura, just long enough for Naruto to make his way towards their direction, and Orochimaru to ask who he is. Naruto would immediately go on to look towards the direction of Orochimaru as he tells him that that's none of his business. Orochimaru goes on to lick his lips before then rushing in and weaving a ton of hand signs, only to shoot out tons of snakes at the direction of Team 7 for Naruto to pretty much look at Sasuke and say, "Sasuke, now!" Sasuke just simply weaves hand signs and shoots a gigantic fire-style fire inferno jutsu, sending all the snakes ablaze and leading Orochimaru to be happy. Quite impressed with Sasuke's development, I should say. And Sasuke would simply look towards the direction of Orochimaru before then breathing heavily and asking what he wants. Orochimaru jumps back, leaps on top of his gigantic snake before saying he simply wants friendly competition and their scroll as well as his eyes, as suddenly he begins to essentially rush at them with a gigantic snake. Naruto's adrenaline would begin pumping like never before, and his danger sense would go off the charts. Sasuke would get hit away, and Naruto, seeing his teammate pretty much get flung away, and then Sakura rushing off to help him and feeling a real sense of death's despair and just doom, would finally tap into the Nine Tails' power for the very first time. When he does so, his powers would skyrocket, and he immediately blitzes towards the direction of the snake, holding it with one hand as it turns to gold and trying to blitz towards the direction of Orochimaru, who simply laughs at him and tells him that it's not gonna happen, kid. He goes on to just dodge all of his attacks as if he was a child and then kick Naruto away without Naruto even getting the chance to even lay a hand on him. Suddenly, he uses the 5-pronged seal and goes on to essentially block the abilities of the Nine Tails, going on to give Sasuke a hiki on his neck before he then departs and tells them that he'll meet them again someday. Naruto passes out, Sasuke would as well, and suddenly the screen goes black. We're now suddenly in a different area, and Zether's selling out for some reason. What? Zether's selling out? No, I'm kidding. I'm not selling out. But I am here to tell you guys about not exactly a sponsor to the video, but more of a, I guess you could kind of call it a sponsor, right? I have an affiliate code, and you guys can actually go check out this company by the name of Some Slight Clothing. They sell the most dope anime merch. I have a bunch of pairs of shorts that they sell. I'm actually wearing them right now. I'm wearing the Law ones from the Wano arc, you know, his the robe that all of them are forced to wear. I forgot what they're called, but that's the pair that I'm wearing today. Yesterday I wore the Gomu Gomu no Mi pair. The day before that I wore the Ope Ope no Mi pair. And yeah, all in all, Some Slight Clothing has a ton of dope anime fire designs, so you guys could definitely go check out. They're $35, but you guys could use my link down below in the description to get 10% off. And trust me guys, they are worth it. All the shorts that I currently own were bought by me prior to actually getting affiliated with these guys. So that's how you guys know that I genuinely support these guys and I love their stuff. I could actually even show you guys pictures of your boy rocking them if you really want to know. But yeah, click the link down below in the description, use my code ZETHER at checkout, and you will immediately be helping your boy out and the channel out. That said, once everything is all said and done and the team pretty much goes on to wake up, they all begin looking around and wondering, what's happening? Naruto wakes up, and by all I mean Naruto. I don't know why I said all of them, but it was Naruto, right? And when he wakes up, he sees Sasuke essentially going berserk on another team, crippling a dude and shattering his arms, and then going on to turn towards the rest of the team as Naruto lunges at Sasuke and touches him with one hand, telling Sasuke that this isn't him. He keeps Sasuke in the gold transformed state for a while, before then finally releasing Sasuke after everything had calmed down. And Sasuke is angry at Naruto, right? He looks at him and asks him what he'd do that for. But Sakura hugs Sasuke from behind and begs him not to hurt Naruto or anybody else, that this isn't like him. Sasuke immediately scoffs and "Get off me!" before he suddenly then just looks towards the direction of Naruto and tells him to never get in his way again. Naruto says, "You got it." And suddenly, they make their way towards the Chunin Tower, where they're greeted by Kakashi Sensei and Iruka, and told about the preliminary part of the Chunin exams.